a woman named Sue Thomas. This picture was taken in 1941. I can tell because my folks got this really experimental disc cutter in 1941, which didn't need to be plugged in. So you could turn this little handle, it would give you enough electricity to put the needle down on a blank record and have somebody sing songs in there, and it would record them. And in that way, my folks got 1,000 songs for the Library of Congress, which are there to this day, which you can go hear if you want to. Sue Thomas taught my father a song you may have heard. He's got the whole world in his hand, he's got the whole world in his hand, he's got the whole world in his hand, he's got the whole world in his hand. First, was my father singing that first? I don't know, but it got to be, Mahalia Jackson recorded it, and it got to be widely known at every camp in the country, really. You know, it was a great campfire song. But she also sang this one. It said, hold my hand, Lord Jesus, hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord Jesus, hold my hand. There's a race that we must run, and the victory to be won. Every hour, give me power to go through. Very simple, no? I'll go through, Lord Jesus, I'll go through. I'll go through, Lord Jesus, I'll go through. There's a race that we must run, and the victory to be won. Every hour, give me power to go through. Another night I would have you sing that with me. But we're moving along. Then there's secular song coming out of the African American experience. So we'll do a little bit of one of those. I work a lot with kids, as I say, at school, so I'll ask you the same question I asked them. Charming old-time kid song or a murder ballad?
Yeah.
Murder. So this came from Clarence Ashley in the western North Carolina. But, you know, it sounds so black. And he could sound so black playing an African-American instrument back there in the Appalachian Mountains. There's another story. Anyway, here's I'm sure out of the black experience comes this. Well, last night to make a little round in the middle of the city and I blowed her down. I went home, I went to bed, 44 pistol under my head. I began to see what a deed I'd done, and I grabbed my hat and away I'd run. I made a good run, just a little too slow. They overtook me in Jericho. I was standing on the corner reading the bill. Along comes the sheriff of Thomasville. Says, young man, is your name Brown? Remember the night shot saved it down. Oh yes, sir, my name is Lee, and I murdered a little city in the first degree. First degree, second degree, right in the papers reading to me. Took me downtown all dressed in black, put me on the train, sent me back. I had no money for to go my bail, and sent me down to the county jail. Stories tonight, but suffice it to say, he gets what was due to him. Shooting down little Sadie. So, secular, work songs, religious songs all blend together, make this African American culture. And then comes the banjo craze. Banjo craze number one. 1830s. Joel Sweeney in Virginia and Dan Emmett in Ohio suddenly decide this is the greatest instrument ever. They learn from black folks on the frontier and the riverine societies, as I've heard one author refer to it as. Dan Emmett out of Ohio was in the Army. He played fife, and so a lot of the musicians were black guys in the Army in 1820, 1815. So he learned directly from black folks. Joel Sweeney in Virginia learned banjo from black folks because the banjo was an African instrument. Thomas Jefferson had slaves. He used to walk amongst his slaves at night and say that he heard the banjo ringing. And we think what he was talking about was this little thumb note that you play all the time in the middle of whatever else you're playing in that old style. Drives the tune. Dan Emmett formed a band, 1843, took it to New York, the Virginia Minstrels. People said, holy shit, what is this music? This is great. As Mark Twain said, it came upon us as a glad and stunning surprise. They just could not believe that this jolly, wonderful, great music was American. And people just fell in love with it. Within a year, the Virginia Minstrels were playing in England. And to this day, in English traditional music, you find remnants of American minstrelsy. I know that. I'll show you. Great little minstrel song. You got enough room. Yeah, these are bones. When the minstrel band first formed, there were 4 instruments: fiddle, banjo, tambourine or drum, and bones. And nobody knows where bones were first played at all. These are 2 cow femur bones, and what these are, shards of the cow femur bone. Used to belong to a cow lived in South Carolina. Hold them together, you turn your hand over, get that satisfying sound. Do it in 2 directions. Speed it up. Once you get the even sound, you can stop the moving bone to syncopate. Kind of like castanets. So I think I was the last person in America to learn this song. I didn't like it so much, but I finally did because I heard music teachers saying how much kids like to sing it. And I said, okay. And I learned it and I sang it, it's okay. And then on a lark once in England, I sang it, and everybody sang it right back to me. I couldn't believe it. Let's see what happens here. Well, I went downtown to see my Sal, Polly Wally Doodle all day. Sal, she is a sassy gal. Polly Wally Doodle all day. Fairly well, fairly well, fairly well, my fairy fair. I'm going to Louisiana for to see Miss Louisiana. Polly Wally Doodle all day. How many people in the first row ever heard that song? Oh, really? Okay, yeah. It's still sometimes taught in schools, but it was, the first publication of that song is 1880. I think it's considerably older. And it has just a bunch of insane American humor, like sassy is sassy gal, Polly Wally Doodle all day, with curly eyes and laughing hair, saying Polly Wally Doodle all day, down grasshopper sitting on the railroad track, Polly Wally Doodle all day, picking at his teeth with a carpet tack. Polly Wally Doodle all day. Very well, very well, very well, my fairy fair. I'm going to Louisiana for to see my Louisiana. Polly Wally Doodle all day. And my favorite, I love watermelon and have for years. Polly Wally Doodle all day. When I eat it up, it gets in my ears. Polly Wally Doodle all day. Very well, very well, very well, my fairy fair. I'm going to Louisiana for to see my Louisiana, singing Polly Wally Doodle all day. Questions so far? This should be back and forth. You know, I'm going to race through some things, and if you say, wait a minute, I don't even know what you're talking about, why don't you go back? But how did you do that anyway? Stuff like that. to be sure, I mean, you've already been reading, right, Sinful Tunes and Spirituals, and so you understand, if you didn't coming into this, the debate about the anger that a lot of people have about minstrelsy and how crude and cruel it was, starting, I don't know, Daddy Rice, 1810, 1800, with guys pretending to do black music and mimicking what they thought were black dances and black songs. And it was demeaning. But there's so much else going on. People loved it not just because they were making fun of black people. There was this sort of rebellious spirit in people. It caught rebellion because it was a little bit rude, and it was a little bit working class, and it was a little bit not standard formal music. And people thought, this is wonderful. And in fact, it was the beginning of America's first pop music. And it goes on to this day. You know, that cross of Anglo-American and African-American music, which became minstrelsy, went on to become what? Blues, jazz, rock and roll, hip-hop, everything. Whatever it is your popular music, it might have happened in England, it could have happened in France, who knows, but it happened here. And so the music that we all love and know came from that mixture, and that was the first time it was out on stage for everybody to hear, American minstrelsy. Lots more to say about that, but I think we'll let it go and move through again to the banjo, because the banjo, we think of it now, it's like the iconic American, say up until my childhood, people really thought that the banjo was raised and born here in America. We now know that it was African. But it's become the white folks' instrument, right? A bluegrass instrument out of Nashville and Kentucky. But it started in Africa, came over here, the West Indies, and in Virginia and North Carolina. And when mountain people came out of the Appalachian Mountains to fight the Civil War, the music in the camps was minstrelsy, because that was all the rage. And they saw banjos and fell in love with them. And they took the concept back to eastern Kentucky and western North Carolina and started making their own banjos. And that's the transition point to the banjo from being an African instrument purely to being essentially now purely an Anglo instrument. In the meantime, in the middle was something like this. I tell the kids when I see them, if you saw, I live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, I said, if you were a kid in New Hampshire and you saw a banjo like this and it was new, it would be around 1840 and it would be in the hands of a black person. Why do I say that? Because before 1840 they were gourds. Around 1840, 1830, it started going on stage, and people said it'd be a little easier if we had flat ones rather than gourd ones. So woodworkers began to use them instead of making them out of gourds. No frets yet. They don't come in until around 1880 to make it a little easier to find out what you're going to play and where it is. This banjo is that sort of in-between time, and it was made by a man named Frank Prophet in western North Carolina, who was born in 1913 and learned from his father how to make a banjo. He took a walnut tree and the white part here, which he told me was a groundhog, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Put some gut strings on there and made this banjo and gave it to me when I was about 20. I was really, really happy to have it. So I'll play a little bit of this old time sound.